Well, anyway, Nigerians.
So my own worry is that
Mr.
clearly, why is this? Yes.
I think Nigerians have been talking on this particular matter, and well, we're excited that for the first time we're getting a headway. But still some unaccounted for, and well, perhaps this is the time for us to see how we can tackle the shortfall in revenues and also address the security situation, both from the operational funds with the NNPC, and we'll talk about other means where people have actually taken some of our crude without accounting for them. Don't you think by now we should be talking of how best we can actually curtail some of these excesses as well as shortfalls in accounting procedures as well as in security of our oil?
I think you just nailed it there. I think you just nailed it.
So what do you think we can do on that?
So what do you think we can do on that?
Yeah, I think we should do that, and this is how I think we should do it. We should look for the agencies of government, the agents of government that are responsible for doing this accounting and that are responsible for security. Now, if statutorily NNPC is responsible for this, we must hold them to account. But it looks to me that those responsible for this, they are clear. Clearly, Nigerian security agencies are responsible for security issues. Pipeline vandalization, theft of crude oil, these things are done by human beings. Yeah, in recent times, I have come to know that particular crude oil theft is done by international cartels. And it's even been claimed that some of these cartels are armed with weapons that are more sophisticated than that in the possession of Nigerian security forces. Now, if that is the case, then we must up our game in terms of security. Because the amount that is being lost to crude oil theft, if that amount alone if half of it is recovered and put into security, definitely nobody will challenge our security forces in terms of contesting for our resources. Now, in terms of accounting, which bodies are responsible for that? Definitely, I think that should be the Ministry of Finance. So why has the proper account? Because let me state it clearly again. That's why I am a little bit comfortable this morning. Honestly, why will you be comfortable this morning is that the entire 49.8 billion now, all the players involved have said it has been accounted for. But now there needs to be reconciliation of 10.8. Now, it is not at this point in time that we should now be told that has not yet been reconciled. Since NNPC has put out the figures, NNPC have said, look, this is what I did with $10.8 billion over a period of 19 months. All right. Somebody in the Ministry of Finance should have analyzed that and say to us, no, you claim to have provided this.
Excuse me, Mr. Ademola, this particular 10.8 really can be explained from what we gather from the outcome. Because if they say the shortfall of $10.8 billion was recorded from the domestic crude component of oil receipts, and they claim that this is unrecovered crude or product losses and the cost of petroleum storage, which they also talked about subsidy. Perhaps we can also tie them to some, should I say, individual companies on this. So when we talk about 10.8, it still can be traced. So have we done well to have actually come out with this without letting the people know that this 10.8 can be traced to maybe A, B, or C?
Well, clearly, you see, in answering that question, I need to first clarify something. Something that is very obvious now is the fact that that complex system of calculating proceeds from oil revenue is something not known even by senior officers of government. You know, let's go a bit back. The central bank governor explained something very significant. He explained that there was no press release. But there was a letter that was written to the president, and that was the letter that was leaked. But even when you look at the content of the letter, with all respect, you see something clearly. That on the part of Sanusi, he clearly lacks the understanding of how this revenue is calculated. And this is not something that you pick up on the street. The revenue is calculated in a very complex way. You know, when you're calculating the revenue, you must speak of royalty, you must speak of the tax on the oil, you must speak of cost oil, that is the cost for running the operations itself, before you now talk of the profit to the investor. Now, different components come through different government agencies.
Just sorry to interrupt you. I was going to ask if you always knew this analysis that you're giving now. Did you always know about it?
Well, because of my own schedule, the truth is that I have known about this for quite a while. But that is because I am into oil and gas. But I know not everybody is into that. So not everybody may know this analysis. But at least I expect that senior officers of government that are directly tied to revenue in the Federal Republic should know about this. In fact, I have a strong suggestion for the NNPC. The NNPC should organize a seminar for the central bank governor and his team and other people in the sector to enlighten them about this. Because the kind of heart attack that was almost caused for patriots when this figure came out should not be repeated. Now, I know that the entire sector has come together to now tell us, okay, this is just, we were concerned, but now we see that it's not really the case. But this kind of figures should not be pushed out into the public, because, you know, 2015 is by the corner. And the entire Federal Republic is very tight. That is just the fact of the matter. Now, when you push out these figures, you agitate the hearts and minds of people. And I don't think this is a proper course of action.
Mr. Ademola, you've talked about, just a moment now, you've talked about how you were privy to this. You've also talked about, you know, organizing seminars. Do you think that we have a problem when we have to organize a seminar for senior government officials to explain how the workings of the oil sector? Don't you think that we have a problem?
Yeah, I think definitely we have a problem, but I don't consider it as too big a problem. And I think that these persons are qualified in their own fields, and I think that what is just not available is the particular information of which we are speaking. And that's why I've suggested that the NNPC should organize that seminar for senior members of the CBN and other persons in the top echelon of our finance. Because that's the problem we have. They clearly are not in charge of the knowledge of how petroleum revenue comes back to government. It comes via around 4 directions. And it is when you pull these directions together, you pull all the streams together, that you come to that entire figure of 49.8. Now, if you look at the one coming through the NNPC alone, you will think, oh, money is missing. But you will not know that the petroleum tax has been collected by the Federal Revenue Service. You will not know that royalty has been collected by DPR. You will not know that because it's a joint venture operation between Nigeria and IOCs, that there has been a cost of 45% accruing to the IOCs. So these things are necessary. It must be technical, they must be understood, and NNPC has that responsibility to make everybody understand it.
Now, this issue between the NNPC and the CBN was quite revealing and very educating for a lot of Nigerians. But one of the things that came out of it was the fact that there seemed to be a lack of communication between government agencies. How can that be handled when they do not share information? How is it that we will not have this kind of discrepancies coming back and forth, especially when it comes to figures? Because this discrepancies has been going back and forth for many, many years. How can we go through this?
Nyota, I align myself with you very clearly. And it's not only in Nigeria. You will recall that happens virtually everywhere. I remember after 9/11 that in the US there was this talk about the fact that if all the security agencies in the United States had shared intelligence and had been cooperating, they may have been able to forestall that attack. Now here, this is all about, this is economic security is also a vital aspect of security, just as you know. I think that the agencies that are directly responsible for this must talk. They must share intelligence. They must share information. Technical expertise must be shared. This is a suggestion that I've made this suggestion privately, but I use this medium to also make this suggestion. I have suggested privately before in fora that there should be official liaisons between this agency. NNPC should clearly have an official liaison and somebody in high authority like a director who is seconded to the CBN. It should have another one in the Ministry of Finance and vice versa. The CBN should have one in NNPC. This should be done round. Now, the job of these officers should be to clarify issues like this. Before the central bank governor will go ahead and write such a letter, such as he wrote to the president, he will have quickly called in that officer and said to him, look, this is my concern. And that officer coming from the NNPC will have been able to say, well, let's close the central bank governor will have been slightly
30 seconds. Mr. Ademola, if you could please. Well, we're closing now. Could you tell us what your thought will be in the future if after the tenure of Malam Sanusi and others, we realize that this was actually swept under the carpet and we're not getting the full gist? What would you be saying then?
Well, clearly a suggestion we must make where yes, I will look at immediately after the tenure, but I even think that the corrections should be put in place now. I think that Mr. President should mandate that what we have seen from here now, the corrections should be immediately put in place. Because if we don't put that correction in place now, after the regime of Malam Sanusi and whoever is in the other side right now, this may have a tendency to continue. Because it is a systemic thing. It is not tied per se to the individuals. Yeah, I know that in the cases of a few commentators, it is tied to them as individuals because it's all politics. 2015 is coming. So some people had to say certain things to discredit certain people to gain some political advantage. But talking about these particular institutions, this is systemic. The correction should be done within the system.
Well, Pt.2, Ademola, Public Affairs Analyst, I'm afraid this is where we'll have to say many thanks for joining us today. Sunrise Dilla takes a moment and we'll return. Join us again.